data into other processes such as manufacturing resource planning and inventory ordering. In the future, all Stepan facilities will have common order entry, inventory, and scheduling software, and managers at the Northfield, Illinois headquarters will be able to get an overall view of the entire manufacturing capability of the company's 11 plants. When a customer requests a change, Stepan will be able to make the change once for all of its plants and make simultaneous deliveries of the product to the customer worldwide. In addition, everything from paper clips to bulk sulfur will be ordered automatically, the sulfur and other key surfactant ingredients according to changing tank levels. Vendors will access the purchasing database to plan deliveries better. Customers will have web access to view product availability and place orders. Order information in turn will be linked back in real time to Stepan's inventory system to ensure that enough chemical components are available in the right locations to fill the orders. Finally, and most important, you need to feed the data from your production process to your line workers so that they can improve the quality of the product itself. If you provide the right technology to help production workers do timely analysis, they'll turn data into actionable information that will help you improve design and reduce defects. Developing a digital nervous system allows you to empower as many of your workers as possible. Information flow is the key. General Motors launched the Saturn Corporation back in 1985 to create not only a brand new car from scratch, but a brand new way of building cars and empowering workers. The goal was a company in which management and workers would pull together to reach common goals, and everybody would care so much about quality that there would be no need for a separate quality assurance department. That dream has produced results. Saturn has won J.D. Power Awards for quality and customer satisfaction for 8 consecutive years, and is attracting a cult-like following of car owners. Teams are tight, autonomous units. Some have as few as 4 members, some as many as 60, but most have 12 to 15 people. Each team has a specific function, such as building engines or doors, and each team member is trained to do approximately 30 different jobs in that area so that people don't get stale from doing repetitive tasks. A team hires its own members and has authority to fire a member who consistently shows up late or does shoddy work. With 20% of its compensation tied to quality, customer satisfaction, and sales, the team operates a little like an independent small business. Like many manufacturers, Saturn has a supervisory control and data acquisition (SCADA) system to run its $1.9 billion manufacturing and assembly complex, 4 million square feet of working space on 2,400 acres of land. The SCADA system, based on GE Fanuc's Simplicity Plant Monitoring and Control application, monitors more than 120,000 separate data points from an array of sensors, motors, transducers, and electrical switches. Each device is checked at least once a second. When the Saturn plant was first set up, Simplicity ran on more than 100 VAX VMS mini-computers, with the data coming in from programmable logic controllers, PLCs. Workers disliked the system's arcane codes and character-based terminals. If you wanted to log a scuffed door panel, for instance, you'd enter something like EPSV 1006 and punch in special codes corresponding to that particular quality problem. Workers would fix a problem, but they wouldn't necessarily log the fix, and Saturn was losing important historical data on quality assurance. In the early 1990s, Saturn made the leap to PCs and the still new Windows NT operating system in its manufacturing and assembly plant. This meant working with GE Fanuc to move Simplicity to Windows NT, as well as giving Microsoft an education in what an operating system needed to do in a complex manufacturing environment. During those early days, our development engineers spent many nights on the phone with Saturn engineers. Today, Saturn's manufacturing system includes 19 PC servers in production and 3 in a test bed, plus about 70 older VAX Mini computers. Saturn's manufacturing software includes Simplicity, a variety of PC server applications and development tools, and standard PC operating systems, running on about 3,500 desktop systems and 500 laptops. Even the PLC sensors are being replaced with PCs. A dispatcher can see all the physical operations of the plant on a single screen, or focus down to the level of any one sensor. If a switch fails at column C, conveyor 500 of the mezzanine level, for instance, the dispatcher can spot the failure immediately and send over an electrician for repair. All 120,000 points of data are analyzed every 6 seconds and delivered to dispatchers in a graphical format. Anybody in the division can log on to the manufacturing section of the Saturn intranet and see a detailed list of, say, the top 10 quality problems that have occurred in end-of-the-line dynamic vehicle tests in the past 2 hours. Through a web interface, the worker can retrieve data from a database, automatically load the data into a spreadsheet, and pivot through the data to analyze it by part and type of problem: trim, door panels, powertrain, and so on, fit, paint, weld, assembly, installation, and so on. By analyzing historical data with off-the-shelf tools, and not having to go to the time and expense of getting a programmer to do a special report, one worker on the powertrain team was able to detect a faulty weld in the engine and save Saturn $1.5 million a month in potential repairs. 3 to 6 internal computer modules control everything on a Saturn, from the brakes to airbag deployment. An engineer reviews diagnostic tests on these modules over the Saturn intranet. Recently, Saturn was able to spot, within less than 2 hours of the first occurrence, a particular kind of failure in the powertrain control module. The company got hold of the vendor, who quickly reprogrammed the modules and returned them to Saturn without holding up production. Saturn also does a pure quality audit of its vehicles by randomly pulling a dozen or so cars off the line each day. The system downloads into a Windows CE-based handheld PC a 3-dimensional schematic specific to the make and model of a car. Using this schematic as a guide, inspectors go through the car and note every irregularity and flaw. If there's a problem with the front left fender, for instance, they'll click on the PC display to get an exploded view of that part. A menu allows them to note the problem. After each audit, inspectors plug their handheld PCs into the network to automatically synchronize the files with the original database. These engineers and other workers analyze the day's data and compare it with historical daily and weekly results. A part that's routinely scratched during assembly could indicate either a problem with the work of the team or a part that's inherently difficult to install. These pure quality audits have enabled inspectors to work with manufacturing to fix the fit and finish of a certain model's fuel filter doors and another model's poor-fitting interior dome lights. All of the quality assurance data, whether from end-of-the-line inspections or the pure quality audits, is fed back to product engineering through Saturn's manufacturing's PC-based information systems. Expertise from the floor is combined with expertise from the engineers to come up with a better design. Saturn workers are qualified to speak because they're information smart. All 3 of the companies I've talked about in this section demonstrate the value of improved information flow even in factories that were already automated. Putting high-quality diagnostic tools in the hands of the people who do the work and building production systems around information flow is essential. Ideally, the tools integrate all of the steps that deliver value to a customer, rather than treating the steps as just a series of individual tasks. Michael Hammer likes to say that the task worker is the last vestige of the old industrial age. In a modern company, every worker has to be involved in the entire process, in all the steps. An acquaintance of mine had an uncle who spent 25 years at an auto plant in Flint, Michigan, tacking chrome strips and other finished parts onto automobiles. It was a good job in the years immediately after World War II, but it followed the classic industrial age approach. Break a process into small, discrete tasks and assign each to one person who does it over and over the one best way. Compare that approach with the way Saturn workers do their jobs today. In the new organization, the worker is no longer a cog in a machine, but is an intelligent part of the overall process. Welders at some steel jobs now have to know algebra and geometry to figure weld angles from computer-generated designs. Water treatment companies train assembly line workers in computerized production measurements and math. New digital photocopiers require the service personnel to have an understanding of computers and the Internet, not just skill with a screwdriver. Human beings remain essential in operational processes that have to constantly improve and that have to constantly adapt to changing circumstances. A flexible production line needs people, well-informed, empowered people. As we consolidate tasks into processes, we give workers more responsibility. Computers will eliminate some jobs, but they will take the drudgery out of many other jobs. Having people focus on whole processes will allow them to tackle more interesting, challenging work. A one-dimensional job, a task, will be eliminated, automated, or rolled into a bigger process. One-dimensional, repetitive work is exactly what computers, robots, and other machines are best at, and what human workers are poorly suited to and almost uniformly despise. Managing a process instead of executing tasks makes someone a knowledge worker, and it is good digital information flow that enables knowledge workers to play their unique roles. From a corporate perspective, another worker-related benefit emerges from good information systems. Only up-to-date and accurate information makes it possible to tie compensation directly to performance, quality, and customer satisfaction. You can't wait until the end of the month to see how everybody did and make adjustments then. You don't want a special scoring for bonus department to independently measure every team's performance. You have to get performance information directly to every team every day. Without electronic feedback loops, tying compensation to performance, a practice more and more companies want to institute, doesn't work well. By creating a good flow of information, Saturn is also preparing itself for mass customization, which combines the efficiencies of high-volume production with the ability to build exactly the model the customer wants. More than most car manufacturers, Saturn already builds a number of custom-made cars. You can imagine the day that a customer in a dealer's showroom or at home uses a PC to order over the Internet exactly the car and the options he or she wants, and getting delivery within a few days. Build to order, which has become increasingly popular in the PC industry, is bound to become a major part of other manufacturing industries, from cars to clothing to furniture. Manufacturing lines, though, have to be smart if they're going to handle many custom jobs for complex machines. Because there's no reverse on the assembly line, the special order chassis and body of a car have to sync up with the right engine and powertrain. If a problem shows up, for example, if a special order purple paint doesn't come out perfect on one of the panels, you need the kind of dynamic scheduling system Saturn uses to keep things moving. Saturn's system searches through all the parts on the line, finds the earliest set of panels that will fit the order, and reassigns these panels to the purple car. The car for which the new panels were originally intended is rescheduled farther back in the line, where panels in the color required for it, say white, are stocked. A problem with a custom job holds up Saturn's assembly line for only 15 or 20 minutes, not for the hours that would be involved if Saturn didn't have its dynamic scheduling software. What Saturn has done will be common sense in the future, but most of the industrial world doesn't work that way yet. Until recently, the hardware and systems cost for such capabilities in manufacturing were prohibitive. The interfaces were too arcane. You simply couldn't afford to gather data on defects and analyze it quickly. Small portable devices will make data gathering even easier. Like Saturn, Boeing has converted its paper-based trouble ticket process into a digital form for handheld PCs, shortening the turnaround time for addressing quality issues during aircraft manufacturing. Other companies are using handhelds to replace paper-based inventory reporting, cutting data collection time in half, improving accuracy, and enabling the reports to be posted on the intranet within hours instead of the week usually required for consolidating paper reports. Wireless networks will make it possible for these devices to go virtually anywhere and report back information even sooner. Saturn officials were the first from a large industrial company to come to us in the early 1990s and say that they wanted to design all of their business processes around PC tools from the factory floor on up. Our reaction was wow. They were coming to us because of the vision of where we were going, not because of what we already had in our product catalog at the time. PC hardware grew in power, and so did our high-end system and handheld software. Saturn provided a great deal of information to us on the requirements for industrial-strength software systems. The pieces came together as the result of a strong relationship between the two companies, and between modern technology and manufacturing processes. Most companies have been willing to give information tools to their high-paid white-collar professionals who do information work for a living. Entergy, Stepan, and Saturn are proving that building systems around information flow and giving information tools to line workers can also provide enormous value. Entergy is methodically overhauling its key business processes and pushing information and decision-making down to the operational level. Stepan is using information to manage its plants as a whole to adapt to changing customer needs. Saturn uses technology to combine the expertise of its line workers with that of its design engineers to tie compensation directly to performance and to set the stage for mass customization in an assembly line setting. All three of these companies are applying knowledge management to business operations to analyze throughput, quality, and failure rates to improve core processes. Digital tools bring more intelligence to their business operations. Give your workers more sophisticated jobs along with better tools, and you'll discover that your employees will become more responsible and bring more intelligence to their work. In the digital age, you need to make knowledge workers out of every employee possible. Part 5. Special Enterprises Provide General Lessons. A few years ago, a new Microsoft employee was called back to his home state because his mother had suffered a mild stroke. When she was well enough to leave the hospital, Mrs. Jones, not her real name, stayed with her sister while her son completed arrangements to move her out to the Northwest to be near him. Mrs. Jones largely recovered, but was never able to live on her own again, and her periods of good health were punctuated by hospital stays, treating more and more acute problems. The medical events of the last 2 years of Mrs. Jones' life demonstrate the best and the worst aspects of American health care. She received good care, including a number of state-of-the-art procedures, from 3 different hospitals and more than a dozen physicians in 2 different states. As her physical abilities declined, her middle-class family was able to find decent facilities providing greater degrees of care. Medicare and her private insurance paid most of the bills. She and her family picked up the rest. Her many doctors, nurses, and other caregivers were professional and uniformly kind. Mrs. Jones retained her dignity to the end when she died in her sleep. Yet when Mrs. Jones left the first hospital for her sister's hometown 30 miles away, a lapse of communication between doctors led to her medication being kept at full strength when Mrs. Jones should have been on a declining dosage. By the time she arrived in the Northwest, side effects of the high dosage required her to be hospitalized immediately. Because her records didn't come with her, a number of expensive tests had to be redone. The same thing happened when she changed hospitals a year later. Her final 3-week hospital stay, which did not involve any surgical procedures, nevertheless cost $25,000. At one point, her outgoing doctor confused her with another patient, and told the next doctor over the phone that her recent hospital stays were an abuse of the system. This was less than a week before Mrs. Jones died. Because of the many hospitals, physicians, clinics, pharmacies, care facilities, and public and private agencies involved, the amount of paperwork was unbelievable. Her son said, during periods of Mom's acute care, paper piled up at a rate of exactly 1 inch per month. On business trips, he took to carrying an extra binder containing the current paperwork related to his mom's care. When he was caught up with his own work, he would painstakingly reconcile bills using colored Post-it notes, blue if a bill had been submitted to Medicare, yellow if it had gone through Medicare and been submitted to a private insurance company, red if he'd returned the bill because of errors, and green if the bill had gone all the way through the system and he was ready to write a check for the balance. Consider the number of people this paperwork represented. For every doctor and nurse who treated his mom, there must have been a dozen billing people in a bunch of different organizations: the hospital or doctor's office, the pharmacy, the social agency, Medicare, the insurance company. It was like an old-fashioned military campaign. For every soldier in the field, you had 20 people behind the lines handling logistics. Most experts estimate that 20 to 30% of the annual trillion-dollar cost of the U.S. healthcare system is tied up in paperwork. In hospitals, that number could be as high as 40 to 50%. A single week's stay can generate as many as 100 pieces of paper. Compounding the cost, about 13% of the 1 to 2 billion claims filed each year in the United States are returned for errors. Paperwork and complexity have soared even as the U.S. healthcare industry has shifted to managed care in an effort to reduce costs, prevent fraud, and ensure consistent and appropriate care. Under the managed care model, an organization, whether Medicare or a private insurance company, will contract with a group of doctors to provide medical services toward managed outcomes and for fixed fees: $1,000 for an appendectomy, $15 for a flu shot, and so on. According to the 1998 Source Book of Health Insurance Data, more than 160 million people in the United States were enrolled in a managed care plan at the beginning of 1997, the last year for which figures were available. Doctors appreciate the need to control costs, but feel buried in regulations and second-guessed by layers of bureaucrats. They're afraid that their medical options are being limited and that patient care may suffer. They have also complicated matters themselves, treating patient files as business records and often hesitating to share them with competing physicians. And they've been largely computer-averse, although much of that aversion can be attributed to the clunkiness and expense of early medical systems. Curiously enough, the managed care that many physicians love to hate may turn out to be the primary driver that extends information systems into patient care and returns control of patient care to doctors. When you get enough clinically helpful information in front of physicians, they see the benefits and ask for more. Patients, meanwhile, are recognizing how much more information is available to them on the web, and how this information gives them a sense of control and responsibility in the maintenance of their own health. Clinical benefits have also encouraged healthcare CEOs to push for better information systems, sometimes against resistance by their boards of directors, which have too often focused on the cost-cutting during the mergers of the last several years. Up to now, healthcare has applied only 2 to 3% of its revenues to information technology, compared with, say, the banking industry's 15%. Although healthcare is a high-tech field, the technology has been directed at standalone diagnostic systems, not at information flow. Often the information applications that are used aren't designed to work with other information applications, despite all the healthcare areas that should share data: the lab, the pharmacy, radiology, the blood bank, medical monitoring devices, charting, and billing systems. Organizations have had to build special interfaces between each and every application. A typical healthcare organization can have hundreds of these interfaces. One organization currently manages 1,800 different interfaces. This complexity is one reason it typically has taken 2 years for a healthcare organization to buy a new system and another 2 years to install it, too slow by any standard. Today the situation is more encouraging. The U.S. government has passed legislation requiring the definition of a standard for electronic finance and administrative transactions, including computer-based patient records. Several organizations are working to establish nationwide technical standards for interoperability of medical applications. The Microsoft Healthcare Users Group, which with MS Hug has one of the friendliest acronyms around, is working to create medical applications that use standard Windows component technology and new Internet technology to plug and play with each other. Better information handling in medical organizations will be a requirement in the future. Some health organizations, recognizing that their patients' needs can't wait, are showing strong leadership. They're proving that a digital nervous system can make invaluable contributions in all areas of patient care, from emergency services through hospital treatment, patient follow-up, and long-term trend analysis. Perhaps no emergency services firm in the country has made more use of PC technology than Acadian Ambulance and Air Med Services in Lafayette, Louisiana, which is building a complete flow of information around Tritech Software Systems VisiCAD for fire EMS software. CAD here means computer-aided dispatch, not design. With 1,200 employees and $90 million in revenues, Acadian is the largest independent ambulance company in the United States. From a single dispatch center in Lafayette, Acadian serves 26 parishes, counties, across 17,000 square miles of cities, towns, sugarcane fields, rice fields, and bayous in the southern part of the state. On a typical day, Acadian will handle 500 to 600 calls involving ambulances and medical helicopters. Users of the PC-based emergency response software system say that it consistently cuts 60 to 90 seconds off immediate response times to 911 emergencies. In a business where life and death can be measured in minutes and seconds, this is a significant advance. But the greatest value is in how the same system enables the emergency medical technicians, EMTs, to give medical help to the injured or the sick, both while EMTs are en route and after they arrive on the scene. While the ambulance is on its way, the software walks the dispatcher through a series of questions to ask the caller about the emergency. The dispatcher downloads the answers to the crew while they're en route and advises the caller on appropriate first aid techniques pending the crew's arrival. The system even reminds the dispatcher to ask about the presence of a guard dog or other potential hazard to the crew at the scene. A new ambulance-based pen chart system running on Fujitsu laptops helps ensure that Acadian's EMTs follow standard treatment steps. The PC displays a schematic of the human body divided into 7 regions. The EMT taps on the schematic at that part of the body with a suspected problem. Based on whether it's a medical condition such as cardiac arrest or a trauma such as a puncture wound to the heart, the PC offers different treatment guidance. Replacing the paper reports the crews have used in the past, the pen chart system enables the ambulance crew to quickly create a new patient file. The system prompts for standard information, converts handwritten hospital names to text, and automatically completes the hospital address fields. If the victim is a subscriber to Acadian's monthly subscription program, the pen chart system populates the chart with medical information from records already loaded on the laptop's hard drive. Intravenous IV treatments and a few other procedures require a doctor to sign off when the ambulance reaches the hospital. The signature is obtained with a stylus in a special field on the PC display. If a new treatment is entered later, another signature by a doctor is required, ensuring medical review of all procedures. Once a report is completed, it's uploaded via remote access into Acadian's network. Encryption technology protects confidential patient information. The pen chart system reminds the crew every day about any files that are incomplete. If a file is not completed and uploaded within 5 days, a late report is automatically emailed to the crew's supervisor, who follows up. The pen chart system has improved the level of accuracy in reports from the 60% to the 90% range. But these operational improvements are only part of the story. The data Acadian collects is helping the company to become even smarter with patient treatment. EMTs face the quandary of whether to establish an IV at the scene and delay departure to the hospital, or start for the hospital first, even though the vehicle motion might make it harder to get an IV going. By analyzing data collected on the new pen-based PCs, Acadian learned that the success rate was identical either way. The company made en route IVs the standard procedure, cutting minutes off arrival time. Analysis of pen data also enabled Acadian to provide specific training to EMTs who had a low success rate with IVs or intubations, the insertion of a tube in a patient's throat to help breathing. Analysis also indicated that Acadian could stop carrying 2 types of medicine that invariably expired and were disposed of before they could be used. With the old paper reports, analysis of these issues and others was difficult at best. Even with shift commanders reviewing the tickets, it was impossible to spot any but the most obvious issues for follow-up, such as substantial delays or a rare major mistake by a crew. The 500 to 600 tickets a day simply piled up, useful only as historical records of individual cases, not for analyzing trends. Going forward, Acadian will have enough local data to understand and respond to almost any medical trend. The company won't have to wait for long-term national studies. Acadian and other ambulance services are also pursuing the next step, transferring digital data along with the patient to the receiving hospital. In Birmingham, Alabama, 10 local hospitals have begun to use TraumaNet, a software program that enables a paramedic to transmit basic patient data electronically from the ambulance. The data goes to a trauma communications center, which directs the ambulance to whichever hospital has the appropriate emergency treatment available, and sends the patient data to the hospital so that the hospital can prepare for the patient's arrival. Ultimately, the goal is to use digital systems to provide a holistic picture of the patient's status by the time the ambulance pulls up to the emergency room doors. Once in the hospital, a patient benefits from information systems that provide the medical staff with more information about the patient's history, capture the details of care to date, and relieve doctors and nurses of excessive paperwork so they can spend more time focusing on the patient. A good illustration of how a hospital can integrate all this patient information is found at Children's Hospital and Regional Medical Center in Seattle. Children's Hospital is a 208-bed nonprofit pediatric hospital affiliated with the University of Washington School of Medicine. The hospital has 180 hospital-based physicians and 100 residents at the hospital, plus another 240 residents who rotate in from other programs. Affiliated with more than 50 outpatient specialty clinics in Alaska, Idaho, Montana, Washington, and Wyoming, Children's also takes pediatric referrals from those 5 states. When a patient is admitted, all identifying information is entered once into a PC and stored in a central database. More than 1,500 PCs are stationed throughout the hospital, on every floor, in every department, and in close proximity to every bedside. Whenever anyone in the hospital interacts with the patient, the encounter is entered into the same database. Any staff member, even a clinician at one of the children's off-site specialty and outpatient clinics, can tap into this information. If a nurse needs to notify a doctor about a patient's status, she can page the doctor, and he can log on to a PC at the hospital or remotely through a dial-up connection and review the patient's condition. Every treatment, test, medication, and procedure administered at Children's is entered into CareVision, a patient information management system from HealthVision Corporation. A CareVision file gives the hospital a complete digital record of the patient and what the hospital has done for him. Developed in coordination with children's clinicians who worked along with the IT staff as part of the project team, the CareVision system can capture data as minute as how often a nurse visits a patient, turns her in her bed, or gives her a bath. A physician can click on a patient name to review the record, drilling down to as much detail as needed. All lab reports and other information that were once part of the 100 pages per week per patient paper flow are now stored digitally in a database. Everything is captured electronically so that the hospital has a complete, instantly available picture of every time and every way the hospital touches the patient. Soon the hospital will add a decision support module to alert medical staff in real time to treatment conflicts and duplications. For example, upon entering a drug order for a child, a physician might be alerted by the system that the medication interacts adversely with another drug the child is receiving, or that the child is allergic to the drug. Or the doctor might order an X-ray and the system will say, "We just ordered an X-ray yesterday. Do you really want another one?" Children's uses its system to develop best practices in caring for patients. The industry term for this is clinical pathways, and it means defining optimum courses of care for specific maladies. Most hospitals have always had clinical pathways for treating certain illnesses, but they were paper-based and often ended up on a shelf where few people could access and use them. Even when they were used, paper-based pathways made it difficult to collect and evaluate data for improvement. At Children's, care data is captured automatically, giving pathway teams ways to track trends and build even better pathways. The teams then program new standard paths into the CareVision system and push them to doctors at the bedside where they're administering treatment. When a physician prescribes a certain drug or treatment, the system double-checks whether their prescription is compatible with the hospital's pathway for that problem. The system alerts doctors to new procedures they might otherwise overlook. This ability to sift through data to develop better medical practices is especially important to Children's Hospital in its capacity as a teaching organization. To assist residents and students, CareVision will contain pre-selected orders that follow the hospital's current best practice guidelines. If the resident is not familiar with the order set, the system can email background information to the resident for later reading. The online references will contain the latest data explaining the pros and cons, in terms of cost and effectiveness, of different treatments. If a resident places an inappropriate order, CareVision will prevent the order from going through, send additional information to the resident as to why the order was stopped, and possibly alert the attending physician to areas where the resident may need more training. Integration of the new system with the legacy billing system at Children's protects the hospital's investment in existing technology, and the new system meets stringent patient confidentiality and security criteria. The system makes it easier to get reimbursed, since extensive documentation is available to insurance providers. Because the system captures all patient care data digitally, the hospital has the ability to run audit trails and produce extensive management reports. PC and web technology benefit patient care not only in hospitals but also in daily clinical practice. Centara Health System of Norfolk, Virginia, a healthcare provider in southern Virginia and northern North Carolina, is using the Internet to put doctors in touch with patients, whether the patients are in the hospital or at home receiving ongoing treatment. Centara has created an intranet-based application called SpinWeb that provides its network of 2,000 physicians and 5,000 office staff with instant access to patient records and other hospital information systems over the web. Doctors dial into Centara's PC servers from their offices or homes to check patients' current medical status and to read lab reports, patient discharge summaries, other patient news, medical reference materials, and insurance information. A surgeon might dial in the night before surgery to check on a patient's condition. SpinWeb also enables a doctor to review, edit, and electronically sign patient documents via a PC from a remote location. Email enables communication among physicians and between Centara and physicians. These capabilities save a doctor from having to drive to the hospital, often from a rural area, every time a routine step in a patient's treatment is completed. It also saves the administrative burden in disseminating all the paperwork. For a large category of high-risk patients, such as individuals with diabetes, Centara provides disease management education and daily monitoring. Today, caseworkers do preventive checkups with these patients on a daily basis, sometimes multiple times a day, checking blood sugar levels and other critical indicators. Using SpinWeb, the patient will soon be able to log on to the Internet and enter her own daily reports that will go to both the caseworker and her physician. The SpinWeb application will be able to make preliminary patient recommendations on its own. If the patient's blood sugar is below a certain level, SpinWeb might instruct her to drink a glass of orange juice. Otherwise, the caseworker and the physician can provide proactive and preventive care for the patient from any location. SpinWeb will also enable Centara to gather trend information. In a diabetes case, it could become clear that the patient's blood sugar level is high every day around 4 p.m., prompting the physician to recommend a change in diet. Internet-based applications such as SpinWeb are broadening information access to the many rural physicians and patients Centara serves. When a patient is referred to a specialist in a nearby city, the hometown doctor can follow the patient's condition via posted reports on the SpinWeb site. Before too long, if a patient needs medical treatment away from the area, SpinWeb will provide the patient's medical records online for any other medical team with proper authorization. A Centara emergency health card will have a toll-free telephone number that another medical facility can call to get access to the Centara website. Within minutes, the remote medical team will know as much about the patient's medical history as the local doctor. In addition to improving both immediate care and ongoing doctor-patient dialogue, information technology can yield answers for improving care through the longer-term capture and analysis of symptoms, illnesses, and treatment. The U.S. Air Force is a leader in using data gathering and analysis to monitor and protect its forces overseas from medical dangers. A number of American service personnel returning from both the Vietnam War and the Persian Gulf War complained of maladies that doctors couldn't figure out. Vietnam veterans believed their ailments were caused by exposure to Agent Orange, a herbicide used by the United States to defoliate vegetation. Speculation on the cause of Gulf War syndrome has ranged from oil fume inhalation to delayed reactions to vaccines to possible exposure to Iraqi chemical weapons. Adding to the confusion, at least one study claims that the number of unusual illnesses reported by Gulf veterans is no higher than the number reported by soldiers who did not serve in the combat zone. Without the consistent tracking of symptoms in the field and later, and of events that might have caused the symptoms, no one can say with certainty whether such illnesses were war-related or what the causes were. After concerns about a possible Gulf War illness became serious in the mid-1990s, Brigadier General Klaus Schaefer, Chief Medical Officer for the U.S. Air Force's Air Combat Command, made a decision. He said, "I'm not about to let Agent Orange or Gulf War syndrome happen to my people. I want to know what environment I'm putting them into and what is happening to them." General Schaefer and his top information systems officer, Lieutenant Colonel Edward Klein, along with a group of technical experts, turned to off-the-shelf PC software, mobile computers, and low-cost servers. The goal was to track and analyze what the military calls disease non-battle injuries, a broad category that covers health problems other than injuries incurred in battle. The result was an application called Desert Care, which enables the Air Force to precisely diagnose illnesses and see illness trends area-wide. In tracking the welfare of troops, Desert Care can also uncover possible unseen health-endangering activities of the enemy. Before Desert Care, one service person's ailment would be just an isolated symptom in the middle of nowhere. The ailment would be dosed with medicine, recorded on a paper-based system, and forgotten. Now, when an Air Force doctor treats service personnel, she also enters the data into a mobile computer. This information is emailed back to the United States daily, where it's merged with reports arriving from elsewhere in the theater. Several teams of university and military statisticians in the United States analyze the data to establish norms, build a bigger picture of what's going on medically, and watch for any patterns of sickness to emerge. If other people on the same base or within, say, a 300-mile radius report similar symptoms, the Air Force knows about those cases right away and can respond. The goal is to provide force protection, to enable the military to respond quickly to a chemical or biological attack. Desert Care proved itself quickly, although in mundane fashion, by picking up on a pattern of sick calls that indicated a slide in food sanitation standards at a particular base kitchen. Without digital assistance, it might have taken the Air Force weeks to realize that there was a problem and institute tighter hygiene. Evolving a complete healthcare system. Imagine you had a healthcare system in your local community built on the components I've described. An intelligent, adaptive emergency system gets you to the hospital quickly, and all critical information on your medical history and the current medical situation feeds immediately into the hospital's computers. A doctor uses a touchscreen, keyboard, pen, or, fairly soon, voice recognition system to order your treatment. Digital instructions are fired off to the labs and the pharmacy. PC-based instruments post lab results electronically. These and other reports are online for easy review by any physician on-site or off. Alerts automatically pop up for any potential treatment conflicts or deviations from the approved clinical pathway. Inventory and billing are handled automatically. Transaction processing systems detect fraud or unusual use, and over time learn appropriate countermeasures. Instead of spending half their time on paperwork, doctors and nurses spend virtually all their time treating you and their other patients. Test results and bills reach you in simple, understandable language. All your treatment and medication information is evaluated automatically over the longer term to help prevent adverse reactions. Your follow-up care is also scheduled automatically. You research medical information on the Internet and have more informed and engaged interactions with caregivers, whether you communicate with them over the Internet via email or you go in for an appointment. You use email to ask routine questions of your health giver and to receive reminders about ongoing health programs or medication that's about to expire. When you change health plans, all your medical history goes with you instead of being lost or trailing after you several months later. It stays with you throughout your life. Doctors use your history to identify trends in blood pressure, cholesterol levels, and other factors to look for patterns that might reveal a serious developing problem. Systematic medical analysis of the whole community alerts authorities to any alarming public health trends much sooner and more accurately than has been possible before. If healthcare communities take an approach based on PC and web technologies, such capabilities do not have to be outrageously expensive. Estimates for creating an integrated patient data system involving doctors, hospitals, and managed care providers vary widely. Medicine and Health magazine estimates the cost for a large hospital, health maintenance organization, or other health system at between $5 million and $50 million annually during the startup phase. The high-side estimates presuppose the continued use of incompatible systems, the use of highly specialized diagnostic equipment, and the continuing development of medical systems as huge monolithic projects. PCs enable a step-by-step approach using more off-the-shelf software. The examples of patient data systems in this section, all developed independently, together cover most aspects of short-term and long-term medical treatment. Because they were all built on the PC platform, they would be simple to link without expensive systems integration. PCs are also now being used as the front end of specialized devices, such as ultrasound, body scanners, and blood and tissue analyzers, reducing their costs and enabling integration of their data. PCs are powerful enough to handle hundreds of thousands of claims per hour, or heavy query loads into patient records. PCs can tie into existing back-end systems if health organizations need them to.